So there you go. What do we do in such a situation? I'm here in the UK. You might be thinking it doesn't matter for you. It's going to be in the US. Well, it does matter for the whole world, actually, because if there's a period of chaos, economic, social, and political chaos in the United States in the next few months, it will encourage America's opponents or enemies, if you want to call them, to do a lot of things they wouldn't have done otherwise, and it could affect the whole world. Saturday, November 2nd, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, we're going to look at the bond market today. I think the bond market is giving us some very conflicting and troubling signs. And we're going to look at a possibility of a chaotic interregnum. And if you don't know what the word means, just hold on and I'll explain what it means. Before we go further, just wanted to give a shout out to one of my affiliates, Dirty Man Safe. So what's Dirty Man Safe? Well, it's hidden protection and instant access for your valuables. And if you use the link below in the description, you're going to get 10% off and a special gift from Dirty Man Safe. What can you keep in your Dirty Man Safe? Well, you can keep some of your gold coins or silver coins or bars. You can keep things like, yes, your hard wallet for cryptocurrencies. If you're into that, you can keep documents. And I think it's more important than ever that we try to keep our valuables safe, not just because it seems like law and order is breaking down, not just in the US, but also in the UK. But also government is coming after our property as well. And talking about that, I'm going to switch over right now before we go into the bond markets and the chaotic interregnum into what's happening here in the UK. And yes, we had the budget on the 30th of October, the first budget of this new Labour government, and there was a lot of speculation, a lot of worries about many things. And I have to say, some of the worries were hyped. For example, the capital gains tax increases weren't that bad, even though they did increase it, which is never good. But there's a few things, and I think the most important thing that is gonna, create trouble for the government is that they've gone after family farms. And how do they do that? Well, prior to this budget, family farms were exempt from inheritance tax. So it was easy to pass your farm on to the next generation. And farming is a very special business because, it's not like a hedge fund or private equity where you get instant gain and gratification from the financialized world that we live in. And hopefully that will be coming to an end soon because we need to focus on real things. But no, the government, they've lifted that exemption, and they have put a threshold of £1 million. So you don't pay capital gains tax on £1 million if you have a farm and you die and you pass it on to your children. But that's not enough. And there's a lot of indignation from the farming community. They're even going to protest on the 19th of November in Westminster. I think they're going to be using French tactics like spraying manure. I think that's really good. I even seen that Elon Musk is criticized that policy on X. Do I agree with Elon Musk on everything? No, but it's good that he's come out about that. I think inheritance tax, anyway, is a very unfair tax. It's a socialist tax. It's a tax that comes from envy, right? Because there are a lot of people out there who start with nothing and they build up a business, or they start as employees and then they try out a business, they take huge risks, and then they do well and they've worked hard and they want to pass it on to their family, their estate. And then comes the government after you die and takes 40% of it off you. I think the farming one is 20%, but it's just as bad because farming is a tough business from what I hear. And they're in very thin margins. So, yeah, if someone passes away and wants to pass it on to their family won't be able to cover that bill. They'll have to sell out the farm, sell the farm. And yes, there is speculation, of course, that there are some powers behind the scenes that want that land, that don't want that land farmed anymore. And yes, like Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum, their strategy is to have, and you can read that in the World Economic Forum, agricultural policies. The globalists, they don't want small farmers because you can't control small farmers. They want like regions that where all the farming is done, so they can have their Monsanto farming or whatever, inorganic farming. They want to ban you from eating meat. We have to have the amount of meat that we eat in the next 10 years. So that's what it's pointing to. And let's hope that, the people and the farmers win out. And I'm not sure they're going to reverse this, but I think it's all wrong. Of course, it's immoral, really, to take people's property once they're dead. When the Queen died, King Charles passed on his Duchy of Cornwall farm to Prince William. Did Prince William, well, he was exempt at the time, I guess, from inheritance tax. But I'm sure if the inheritance tax had been lifted by then on farms, he wouldn't have paid a penny in inheritance tax. So that's the other thing as well. If you're going to make everyone pay inheritance tax, make the monarch pay inheritance tax. But their excuse, of course, is, if they paid inheritance tax, they wouldn't have anything left. Well, so if it's not a good thing for the monarch and the royal family not to have any estate left, why isn't it the same for us? We're supposed to be sovereigns, and the monarch is supposed to be the head sovereign and protect each individual sovereign. But that doesn't happen anymore, I guess, because the monarch, or King Charles III, is not a sovereign anymore. He's just a puppet doing the bidding of the globalists and the bankers. So that's how I feel about it. The other thing in the budget that I think is going to hurt the economy, and even the Institute for Fiscal Studies, which is quite a left-wing institute, they've said that the national insurance increase for employers is going to hurt the economy. So there you go. So let's start with the bond market, because I think it's really important. And what raised red flags for me yesterday, and I worked for 25 years in the bond markets, first in the cash market where you trade cash bonds, let's say treasuries or even corporate bonds. And then I moved on to the futures market where you trade treasury note futures, treasury bond futures, short-term interest rate futures. So I know I've been through it, every non-farm payroll during those 25 years, and the reaction from the markets to the numbers. And I can tell you that the reaction yesterday was very bad. And why is that? Well, we had a very weak number in terms of the non-farm payroll. It was expected to rise by 106,000, only rose by 12,000. It was probably fudged anyway to look positive. but it was a really bad number. And the previous number was revised as well, if I'm not mistaken, slightly lower. And we saw as well that private non-farm payroll was expected to rise by 90,000 and it dropped by 28,000. And manufacturing payrolls dropped by 46,000, expected to drop by 28,000. What about government payrolls? Well, they didn't have an expectation for government payrolls, but government payrolls rose by 40,000. So if it wasn't for the government, and this is the whole story of the US economy and the UK economy to some extent, the reason why they're still showing positive GDP is because of the fiscal spending, the fiscal largesse, and I think the bond markets are waking up to it. So why was yesterday such a important day, in my opinion? Well, in the past, if you had such a weak jobs number, the bond markets would have rallied, the 10-year yield, the 2-year yield would have dropped, and the stock market would have gone up, and it did. I agree, but it came off actually at the end of the day from the highs. And I still think the stock markets are kind of in trouble. But what we saw yesterday, though, with these very weak numbers, was that the 10-year yield broke some key technical levels, and it's been rising ever since the Fed cut rates by 50 basis points back on September 18th. I think that was a big mistake, and they're expected to cut again on Thursday, the 7th of November, by 25 basis points. I think that's going to be another mistake. So why is the bond market not buying this? Why are the bond vigilantes selling bonds? Well, there's two things, in my opinion. One is that prices are still rising, i.e. the consequence of inflation is still there. Yes, the Fed raised rates aggressively in the last few years. It's let the balance sheet come off. It did a lot of QT, but there's still a lot of currency and credit out there. And in the jobs data, I think what the market didn't like is that average hourly earnings is still really high. And I'm not saying that people earning a lot creates inflation, because some people say it does. No, it's the consequence thereof, but it's showing that, there's still inflationary pressures, that policy is still too loose. And why would we be near all-time highs as well in the stock market if policy wasn't that loose, right? And fiscal policy as well is very loose. So average hourly earnings went up by 4% year on year and 0.4% month on month. It was expected to be 0.3%. And believe me, a 0.1% difference from expectation does matter for these markets. So what's the second reason? And I think this is the biggest reason. Well, it's because there's so much debt out there and the economies are in trouble, as we can see with the jobs data. And with the budget in the UK as well, the economy is going to get in trouble. And they're going to keep taxing us, at least here in the UK. In the US, it's possible as well. So the economy is going to do even worse. The government is going to find it really hard to get tax receipts. And with the debt ballooning, we're almost at 36 trillion in the US. The supply of bonds that the Treasury will have to issue is going to balloon. And I don't think there's enough demand out there for it. And that's the other reason why I saw the other day that the Treasury is going to buy back some old bonds, because I don't think people want them. And that's the real gist of it. And this could create a lot of problems. This is where we'll skip to the interregnum. And I know a lot of you know what interregnum means. It's just a Latin word, and it means the lame duck period between the election and inauguration. So especially if it's a new administration that will be coming in. So even if it is Harris that wins, it will be an interregnum because it will be a new administration. Because right now, don't forget, President Biden is still supposedly the president, but it will be also, if Trump wins, there will be an interregnum, and I've calculated here, of 76 days from November 6th, the day after the election, when we find out, hopefully, who won, and then January 20th, which is Monday in 2025, 76 days of interregnum between reigns. That's what it means. And it could be really chaotic. And a lot of you might know as well that prior to 1933, when FDR was inaugurated, well, prior to 1937, sorry, the inauguration used to be on March, in the beginning of March. And March 4th, 1933 was the last time that it was in March, and they had to pass a new amendment to the Constitution to change that to January 20th. And sometimes it's not on January 20th because if it falls, I think, on the weekend, they might change the day. But why do they change that? That's the question you need to ask. Well, I've recommended this book here, The Great Depression, a diary, Benjamin Roth. He was a lawyer that kept a diary about what was going on politically, economically, financially, geopolitically in the 1930s. And it was edited by James Ledbetter and Daniel B. Roth, who was a son of Benjamin Roth, and they've collated all his diaries and they put it in print. And one thing that is interesting is the period after FDR won in a landslide in November of 1932 up until March 1933. And I'll just read the editor's note here about what happened. By the end of 1932, 1 out of every 4 families in Youngstown, that's Ohio, needed the support of charity. But in January 1933, Benjamin Roth wrote in his diary that people seemed to be marking time until the new Democratic president took office. But in the short term, between Franklin Delano Roosevelt's November landslide victory as the 32nd president of the United States and his inauguration on March 4th, events taking place in the banking system, farming, there you go, again, the Hoover administration and overseas created a more turbulent socio-economic environment. As Richard Pelz puts it, economically, the winter of 1932 and 1933 was the worst in American history. And you probably know that when FDR was inaugurated, he called a bank holiday, National Bank Holiday. And I used to think that he called it because, yes, there were bank runs, but what I didn't realize is that the bank holidays had already started in each individual states, and it spread. It was spreading all over the United States, so he just called a national one. So that's how bad it was. And I think, after he was inaugurated, and I'm not like taking sides here about FDR or anything else, but you can see that the stock market bottomed after he was inaugurated on March 4th because there was certainty. So what I'm trying to say here, we could be in for a very chaotic interregnum. And the only upside right now that we have on 1933 is that the interregnum is not going to be as long. So there you go. What do we do in such a situation? I'm here in the UK. You might be thinking it doesn't matter for you. It's going to be in the US. Well, it does matter for the whole world, actually, because if there's a period of chaos, economic, social, and political chaos in the United States in the next few months, it will encourage America's opponents or enemies, if you want to call them, to do a lot of things they wouldn't have done otherwise, and it could affect the whole world. Well, and I'm going to take a page out of FDR's book, and I'm not a fan of FDR, but he said the only thing you need to fear is fear itself. So what I'm trying to say here, yes, I think there's going to be a lot of chaos everywhere around the world, especially in the United States. But you shouldn't despair, because things will get better. I mean, 1932-33 was the depth of despair for America economically, but it came back. So that's what I'm trying to say here. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good weekend. Take care. Bye.